Let's have a show for the universe tonight, because things ripple. They really do. Okay. So I'm Lisa Starr. Until the end of the night, I'm the artistic director of the Arts Café Mystic. I might be henched on the way to the lot, but at any rate, I can't speak if I don't speak from my heart. And that's what's more important to me than anything else. And now I get to introduce our opening voice, my friend and the most beloved friend of the Arts Café Mystic, with Melanie Greenhouse, who's here somewhere. Melanie Greenhouse and Christy Max Williams founded the Arts Café Mystic. It's 27 years now, friends. In this time of funny time, we're into the 27th year. So we're more than the first quarter of a century. So many of you know Christy so well through all of his careers, his work in the nonprofit world with the Audubon Society, his affiliation with hospice, as the caretaker of this amazing organization for the last 15 years. He was the artistic director, and I just got to replace him. I've known Christy as a friend, in particular as somebody who held me up when I hit rock bottom and believed in me until I could believe in myself. I also know him as a poet through those things that I used to do at the Savoy bookstore and at the Quaker Meeting House in Westerly, which we will resume again. But I know I've known Christy as a fine poet for many, many years. Not only a poet whose poems I appreciate, but a poet whose technique teaches me, and I'm not somebody who's good at being taught unless I choose it my way. One of the most interesting things to me, Christy's voice, you'll hear as he reads his poems, it's inimicable, but one of his real gifts is his ability to take the form of poetry and transform it into something that feels formless. That's what I learned from him the most as a poet. What I learned from him best of all is how to be a friend. So I welcome him to the podium. Christy Max Williams, friends.
It's a bit of an interesting moment, don't you think? Thank you, Lisa. Dear Lisa, we picked the right person, don't you think? I also want to thank Carol Ann Davis and Mark Douglas Mercado for permitting me to be their warm-up act. But most of all, I want to thank you, my friends, for being here tonight. Your presence touches me, and I won't forget this. Okay, let's begin with a COVID poem. I should say that there's reference to an island in this poem. In fact, my beloved and I do live on an island. This is called Love in Plague Time. The newspaper arrives, reporting death and disease. Somewhere a friend is sick. Throughout the day, I feel the slow, steady hum of sadness. We are an island surrounded by a sea of virus. Through the window, I watch you putter in the garden, squatting on your strong haunches, hair spraying like straw from under your hat, hands soiled in the earth. You stand, survey your work, happy. Then lifting your eyes, meeting mine, you smile, shyly smile, appearing surprised, and I want you. The newspaper rests on the table. More death and disease. Somewhere a friend is dying. Throughout the day I can hear the nearing echo of grief. Shedding our tired clothes, I find your skin tense and ready, your eyes bright and deep. The spring light is milky, smooth. Your hands, my hands are everywhere. The taste, the aroma, eager and demure. We are an island of kisses engulfed by the overwhelming suddenness. When the newspaper is discarded, the steady hum of sadness remains. The nearing echo of grief remains. The half moon shines, watery and cool. We shine, feeling strange and old, glad for this day, wanting another. We are an island of humility in a sea of darkness. Somehow the moon shines through the window. Thank you. Thank you. Love is on my mind tonight. I won't blush to say so. Do you remember the moment, I hope as a young person, when you discovered learning, when you discovered that you loved learning, loved knowledge? For me, it happened when I was a freshman in college in Berkeley, California, which is where this poem is set. The poem is called Goethe in California. You'll remember that Goethe is the greatest German writer. Goethe in California. Oh, to be young in California, to be blessed and cursed with a mind on fire. There we gathered, the hopeful best and brightest of our generation, gathered outside that hallowed hall of learning in the midday sunshine of a swelling spring, circled on the new mowed lawn beneath the blooming cherry tree. She too arrived, aglow, amazed all too apparently by life, though smiling shyly, if slyly, at me. For lately I had taught her how to kiss. A willing pupil, though apt to let her teeth click eagerly on mine. I'm reading something so far out, she said. It's called The Stranger, by a French guy, Albert Camus. Albert Camus, I interrupted, in my freshly honed, though fledgling French. And it's L'étranger, I finished with a flourish, scarcely noticing her flashing eyes, her flushed cheeks, her mute humiliation, as I proceeded to hold forth on Camus' Sisyphus, on human toil and suffering in a godless world, on man's responsibility to make a meaning of compassion. But the book I was combustible about was Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther. Its Sturm and Drang, its tragic beauty of an unrequited love, and oh, how I soared like a German eagle in my wild flight. Until another of our gathering, a friend, spoke up to say, I think you may mean Goethe. The world stopped. What? I gasped, and felt all eyes fixed on me. The air was still. The sun was in my eyes. I could not breathe. And it's Werther, not Werther, he added with a helpful smile. Goethe, Goethe, Goethe. What sinister and senseless sort of world would say or spell a great man's name that way? I may have nodded in reply, but surely did not speak. In my humiliation, utterly unutterable, I looked to her, and meeting with her eyes, I was amazed to see in them the very color of compassion. Thanks. Sometimes love goes stupid. I find this regrettably all too a masculine phenomenon. This poem is called Winter Moon. Oh, for you aficionados of formal verse, this is written in terza rima, the rhyming scheme that Dante invented for his Divine Comedy. Winter Moon. Winter. I wake to a bitter night, hear the wind, recall my love and I are out of sorts. But the full moon's light is lovely. What was it we fought about? Certainly my rage was justified, but to what end? She was wrong, no doubt, unfair, really, but I'd be mollified by her apology. The house is still, her breath the only sound, amplified by the cold quiet. If I could just distill this peace, this calm. When did she come to bed, and why? Asleep, she is much more daffodil than holly. Yet what was it she said enraged me so? The moonlight fills the room like breath, her breath. What if I were dead? Would she grieve or curse or celebrate my doom? Doom, a bad word for a worse thought. Her breath, deep, strong, as if she would subsume my lurching thoughts into the hot, sure engine of her heart, as if its steady thrum could heal my rage and hurt. Now there's a thought. Why does she love me? Did she come to bed because of love? She breathes so well. Each give and take of breath seems to succumb to, then embrace life's urge, tapping a well of clear, sweet water. Is love like that? Why do I love her? Who can tell might be the answer, with the caveat that love is not a question. What if I wake her now to see the moonlight? Then what? Would she be angry? What if instead I wake her to apologize? Or would that be one more mistake? Oh, thanks. Thanks. Do you remember as a child how strange life was? How strange the world was? And do you remember loving that just a little? This poem is called First Blood. It's set in Southern California, which is where I'm from. First Blood. Then I heard it, the long, slow screech of tires on pavement. In church, a small, strange boy enthralled to finger fidgets. I raised my head and listened to the prolonged road shriek, listened as it ceased with a concussive crash of steel and glass. Then sudden silence. Was it sound or silence that reverberated in my restless mind? And why had no one else looked up? Had they heard it? Had I? After prayers, after what seemed distant sirens, after punch and cookies on the sunny patio among the grown-ups with their cigarettes and coffee, I asked my folks if I might walk the few streets home from church. Then, unobserved, I headed to my secret path, the beaten track of dirt between the forest of oleanders by the road, where I was certain no one else would be. The skinny trail was baked and hard. The canopy of oleanders shifted with the breeze, and then, as always on that path, I felt that something was about to happen. And suddenly, there was a shiny shard of steel, which wasn't there a week ago. Curved, fist-sized, a hole at one end. I held and fingered it until, just ahead, a glint of glass distracted me, smaller than a marble, a jagged nugget, tinged a pale, clear aquamarine. And kneeling to it, holding it, I peered through a gash in the oleanders to the road, where on the pavement a splash of glassy nuggets glistened in the sun. Then I was stopped where I had almost stepped. The tips of Sunday shoes a step from it. A shining puddle in the path, a puddle brilliant red, a redness new to me. The world was still, as squatting on my haunches I considered it, reached and touched a finger to the puddle's surface, drew the red-tipped finger up, thought to taste it, realized it must be blood. What was that light? What was that sound, that smell, that taste? What else but death's pure aura? In that bright stillness a shudder worked my spine. Then I myself grew still and understood. I too would someday die. The day was bright and warm. Life was deeply strange and new. But I was not afraid. I did not understand to be afraid. This next poem harkens to when our children were young, when we had the good luck to travel to Europe a couple or few times, where we traveled as poor students staying in hostels or crummy apartments, flea bag hotels, that sort of thing, picnicking a lot. This poem recounts a moment during that. It's called Kingdom. That cheap hotel room just within the massive walls of old San Malo. That small, airless, paid-for in cash room whose narrow window overlooked the cafe terrace, which that afternoon was slow and murmuring. That dim, hot haven of a room with yellow walls, or were they yellowing, and through whose slightly parted curtains slanting sunlight glorified a shaft of languid dust. That moment when I wakened there, my love beside me, napping still, as were our little children, head to toe upon the sagging single bed a step from ours. That last room in the inn, where as I lay there drowsy give and take of breath, dwelled peaceably amid the distant cafe clink of cutlery and glassware. Oh, that was my momentary kingdom. Thank you. Thank you. All right, this next poem is set in New York City, where I decamped from California. I arrived in New York to be an actor, a director, and a writer, all of which I did, among many other careers that I had in New York. This poem recounts an episode shortly after I had ceased to do acting, or an interlude during which I wasn't. It makes reference to, of course, the great Sophocles play, Oedipus Rex. I played the title role in what had to be one of the strangest productions of the play ever. You'll remember that Sophocles kills his father, marries his mother, has children with his mother. His mother's named Jocasta. One of his daughters is named Ismene. All right. This poem is called Uptown Bus. It was already late, but really, isn't it always late? When at last the bus arrived, I found my place in back, holding the pole for lack of seats, idling my thoughts for want of inspiration, when a sudden voice called out my name, and turning, "Sue," I said to the flash of her inquiring smile, surprised her name had sprung so readily to mind. Seeing her, I thought of you, beloved, my new and current, my only you. She stood and joined me at the pole, grasping with a gloved hand, a loosely knit cashmere gray glove, strange and beautiful on that fine September day. Even as I gazed perhaps intently at her face, like a man long gone from home, who after hardship beholds again his native land. This is another life that still could be. This is another kind of we. She was pretty still. Pretty her smooth olive skin, her clear brown eyes, and aureole of black curls. And with that smile, she asked me how I was. Indeed, how was I? And shouldn't I have said I was in love? Fine, I said, though it has never been the case. I'm fine too, she said without me asking. Then kindly asked, have you been getting work? A question that I hadn't heard in years. I might have said of you, you're all the work that I can do. Years before, Sue played Ismene to my Oedipus, both Rex and at Colonus, in repertory weeks off Broadway, costume and painted like Greek vases, by a mad and all too Greek director whose vision of the drama's tragic agon saw the female chorus bare and beat their lovely breasts. Even as the hapless hero became all too naked at the sight of poor Jocasta's hanging. A kind of work if you can get it. Had I become another kind of man? It seemed I was another kind of man. I hadn't seen this Sue since the morning after that final fateful night of Oedipus. But it was Ismene and her father-brother who became naked that night in Sue's apartment. A twist of comic fate at least as sweet as Sophocles might have imagined. Her body glowing in soft light through that long and fragrant interlude. In the morning I went home to a betrayed and bittered spouse. Untethered, uncommitted, improvised, then as ever, at my life too much surprised. I'm married now, said Sue, and pregnant too, smiling, looking frank and straight into my eyes. I'm a hand model, she added. It's why I wear these gloves, she said, removing one, showing me a smooth and glowing hand. Wonderful, I think I said, sincerely, her eyes still holding mine. But then it was her stop. The bus door opened, and in the usual way we smiled, shook hands, and wished each other well. As wondering, I clung still to the pole, as streets and minutes must have passed. Oh, shouldn't I have said I was in love with you, which was and still is true. This final poem I wrote in June in the midst of participating in some of the region's Black Lives Matter demonstrations, all of which hearkened me back to demonstrations against the war, against nuclear weapons. You remember some of those, eh? This is called Becoming America. This is my final poem for the night. Again, thank you to Lisa, to the Arts Café, and thank you all, dear friends, for being here. Becoming America in two parts. Part one, count me. I'm with you. I have scrawled my sign. My bandana's moistened, knotted. I'm old but ready. If you have my back, I have yours. I would be counted by your side. I was counted there in Selma, Berkeley, Washington, D.C., at Stonewall, Ferguson, Kent State, and Jackson. I have been among the multitude, nameless, with my one life shining on the line. Broken-hearted by our country's greed and cruelty, outraged by its deadly race hate, I have taken to the streets. I have sat down on the steps and waited for the cops. I have been arrested, handcuffed, led away. I have hunched down on the floors of crowded jail cells, frightened for my future. I have marched towards the cops, their sticks and shields at ready, the sunlight gleaming from their helmets. I have stopped and stood my ground before the nation's guard, their guns aimed at my heart. I have choked on tear gas, picked up the hot and smoking gas grenade and flung it back at the police. I have joined in building barricades, and when the cops stormed through them, I was sick with fear and rage. But I am here again. Count me. Part two. America, my love, you see, you're not alone. I'm here among the many who would be your better angels. In your streets, as in our homes, we would help you live your natural goodness. America, my love, I'm here because you will not listen, because you've sold your soul to corporate gigolos, because you've lost your mind to visions of dominion, because you've auctioned off the land, the sea, the sky, the very fate and future of your people. America, my love, stop reading those deceitful press releases, the ones proclaiming you the greatest, richest, and most powerful, because if it were true, your people would not want for health, for learning, for rent and food. We would not wonder why our happiness and welfare are not in the national interest. We would not wonder why we fight and lose long wars in places we have never visited nor wanted to, or why our war vets wander abject streets in madness and despair, seeking manhood in a bottle or a needle. America, my love, we've taken to the streets that lead to your great heart. Because your justice is not colorblind. Because the cops keep killing young black men. Because Latinos fear a knock upon their door. Because your streets aren't safe for your most fragile citizens. Because they are not, because they are afraid to vote. Because your judges, senators, and president force feckless sex prerogatives on women in their power and get away with it. Because it's time that women run the country. America, for love of you, we won't stand down. Not while our Congress wanders hollow-eyed among the cloakrooms of the Capitol, craving one more corporate fix. Not while lobbyists serve as pimps purveying cash fellatio. Not while buying politicians with campaign donations is called free speech, not common bribery. America, my love, it's your ideals that make you rich. They are your capital to spend on us, spend on a nation yearning for your goodness. Of, by, and for us, we the people insist on a government that gives you courage to fulfill your principles of justice, freedom, and equality. America, my love, we won't stand down until we can breathe, a free people, equal in each other's eyes, proud of the country that we love. Thank you.
I mean, even that word he used for that form that Dante uses breaks me out in hives, you know? And he does it so naturally. Christy, where are you, sweetheart? That was an extraordinary reading. Where are you? Thank you. Thank you. And I loved hearing the words echo off the river, and I also love watching this river flow and thinking about, I mean, everything carries energy. So those astonishing, and I'm so glad you read so many of your newer poems, which are a little bit rawer and very, very wildly alive. I just think of the water that has felt them too, carrying it in and out, you know? Good work, my friend. Thank you very, very, very much for blessing us with your words. I know many of your friends who haven't heard your poems before are pretty, hopefully, astonished by how much you carry. All right. The introductions thing is not my best thing. I don't like the long formal ones, and I'm blinded by the light, and I want to keep it moving. Mark Douglas Broder, where are you? Close by. Okay, so a friend of mine told me I needed to go hear this man sing. He lives locally in Westerly, where I live, and I made a big plan to do that. It was like for March 18th or something, and then the coronavirus hit, so I haven't been able to hear him sing, but I had this wonderful opportunity to bring him here. In the meantime, I've been brushing up on all of Mark Douglas's work. I mean, I could tell you they grew up in Rye and went to a private school and went to a really good college and then discovered really kind of singing when you went to school in Florida. I know the songs that reach my heart the most. They're the songs about the everyday people and those slants of light that make us turn and think about things a little bit differently and catapult us into actually thinking about lives beyond our own, what it might feel like to be that guy or that girl. I'm the youngest of three children, and my brother and sister mean the world to me. My sister, when I was 11, introduced me to Harry Chapin. And to me, Mark, your songs most remind me of that singer-songwriter, a man that could bring me to my knees at the age of 11 with experiences that I'd never had before. I think you're authentic and true and beautiful, and I'm so glad that you canceled another engagement to join us here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Douglas Berardo.
Thank you, Lisa. I love Harry Chapin. Thank you, Christy. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for those poems. Caroline said, no, case closed. We cannot get sick and leave us now. Then she rose to the window, looking down on the street where she froze. She said, James, we both made mistakes. We both played a hurtful part. But the thought of losing you right now is breaking my heart. I don't want this kind of cancer in our life. And I meant forever when I said I'd be your wife, and I will no longer take us for granted or treat you in a dismissive way. Just get better today. In the corner, they had clutter. On the metal, they had rust. But now and then, there's gonna be moments that'll shake out the dust. See, Charlie drove 200 miles a day. His job was always taking him away, and his kids, they just gotten used to it. Charlie missed a lot. Soon things like birthdays he forgot. Did not see the truck jacking across the lane. He swerved and missed that Mack truck jacking in the pouring rain. SUV ended up backwards on the rail. Inches from extinction, he could only hear the sirens wail. And now home and his children were the only things on his mind. That was the end of his daily grind. In the corner, he had clutter. On the metal, he had rust. But now and then, there's gonna be moments that will shake out the dust. Hey. See, TV report broke in, said Delta Flight 306 fell out of the sky near Dallas and crashed into the sticks. And it stopped our argument, it shattered the tents. What we had been bickering about suddenly seemed like such nonsense. In the corners we had clutter. On the metal we had rust. But now and then there's gonna be moments that will shake out the dust. And now and then there are moments to shake out the dust. Thank you for applauding. It's very nice. I don't often get invited to such nice gatherings, so it's nice to be here. just to be sort of wearing clothes and being out among humans. So I even wore some socks tonight. It's nice. All right, let's see. I didn't have a plan, which is a good, way to be in show business. But it's so beautiful here on this river. When I first moved to this part of the world, I think it was around 2006. I'd come from California, Christy, from Santa Cruz area. And I wandered into the borough, and sometimes writing songs isn't incredibly hard. I just sort of wrote down what I saw. This is called Harbor. Well, the hurricane, 38, about destroyed the whole damn fleet. The fishermen were out of luck then. They were back out on the street. My grandfather took to the whiskey and it made them both quiet and mean. One drink and he'd be screaming. The next he'd be so serene. He would walk the edge of the harbor, keep it all inside, and he died in 1975. Down in the borough, now it's quiet, and the saloops are all on blocks. And years before, it was so alive down there, they spoke mostly Portuguese on these docks. You see me, I came to this town, I was drawn to the sea. I thought that the past would be something that the ocean would set me free. But there's something I can't tell you, something that I've kept in. I've stored it at the bottom, but it's coming up again. So I walk the edge of the harbor, mutter to myself, and I keep a little whiskey on the shelf. See, this morning, the thunderheads did gather, and I watched a seabird fly to the edge of the breakwall and unto the western sky. Out beyond that break and unto the wild sea, light as air, that bird was free. He was a high above my tiny world to the western blue. Long gone, finally out of view. What that really made me feel, I cannot really say. I can't find the words today. Here in the harbor, here in the harbor, thank you guys. I made it up. I'm going to play a song. This is sort of a song about getting older. I'm 51 years old. I'm a relatively young fellow, but I've noticed recently when I'm playing this song, I've been forgetting the words a lot, which is really starting to disturb me. Crickets are in tune. Listen, How long can you run? Trying to outrace the setting sun. How long can you roll before you're gonna have to pay the toll? See, the body breaks and is slow to respond, and the mind's half full and then it's half gone, and the hair on your head turns to gray with every passing day, little by little, every passing day. You see, time is a currency that you can't save, crashing on the beach like so many waves. The body is just wires and bones, slowly broken up by sticks and stones. Each moment comes, then it's gone, it's out to the great beyond. The hair on your head turns to gray with every passing day, little by little, every passing day. Heard it said that nothing lasts, that everything will surely be past. And Bobby says you better get busy being born. And Dinah says blow your horn. Dinah says blow your horn. See, everything that matters now. Everything's changing. The moon is jumping over the cow. Got 24 hours on the clock. Somewhere in the cradle, the baby gonna rock. Somewhere in the cradle, the baby gonna rock. Got mother, child in a beautiful bond, and the child grows up, and the child's gone, and the hair on your head turns to gray. Every passing day, little by little, every passing day, with every passing day, little by little, every passing day, little by little, every passing day, little by little, every passing, every passing day. Thank you. It's nice, I find, when you sing a song with your eyes closed and then you open it up at the end and there's still people there. That's amazing. It's really the payoff. So, like I said earlier, Christy mentioned, you grew up in California, is that correct? Yeah. I lived there briefly in Santa Cruz, the mountains there in Bonnie Doon. Probably the late 1980s. And I thought, since, it's nice to be around folks that are close listeners and enjoy a story or a poem or two. Sometimes I just play for drunk people, so this is nice. This is nice. It's nice to be here. But this is a song about a guy that I met while I was there. He was an interesting character. At the time, California was kind of going through the thing where Silicon Valley was happening, and there was a lot of characters there. In Santa Cruz and Bonnie Doon and that area was sort of the land where sort of 60s rock stars went to sort of retire, I think, and sort of the land of, there's always, like, my neighbor was a guy in like a band called the Moby Grape, and some other guy was, in Frank Zappa's band or something. But it was an interesting time, and sort of the land of the old Volkswagen bus. In fact, there was a place that fixed those buses, and I thought the name was just wonderful. It was called the Old Volkshome, and it just gave me joy every day. So here's the story of lightning. In 1966, the world was just waking up and coming to. San Francisco, the Beatles played Candlestick. Everything was feeling brand new. The beat poets had all but left North Beach, and the scene had moved to the park. In the middle of all that, my man Lightning lit up the dark. He was born Charlie McChristie in an East Coast suburban town. Was a country club kid with a silver spoon, playing on the fresh cut ground, and all the teachers called him brilliant, and all the girls, they loved his face. But he could not feel the love inside. First chance he got, he lit up out of that place. Lightning, he was flashing, he was off and on, then he was gone. Took a scholarship to San Francisco State, had all the promise in the world. Soon discovered pills, carousel ballroom, and those free love girls. It didn't take long to change him. Lightning stopped going to class. He told me that a few hits of Owsley will do that to you. Some of that stuff will put you on your ass. His hippie friends called him Lightning, and that suited him just fine. In fact, his mind was moving fast, working overtime. See, he had the idea for the space phone, personal arithmetic machines. But the drugs kept the genius bottled up. They remained just dreams. He could not bottle the lightning that was flashing. It was off and on, and brother, he was gone. They were throwing around the idea. They were dancing around the fire. It would be hard to find a place on earth right then that was getting any higher. You got your LSD, mescalito. Lightning passed that acid test. But he could not feel love inside, so it left him disillusioned and depressed. The 60s, they slid into the 70s. Lightning drifted further west to a beach shack in Lahaina, but by then he was just a mess. The dope was replaced by hard liquor and an anger inside. For him, the free love dream was over. For Lightning, it was a lie. He drowned one night in Kauai, drunk on stolen cheap champagne. His Hawaiian friends at the funeral, man, they didn't even know his real name. That's just the thumbnail sketch of Lightning. Man, he came and then he went. See, one minute you're here, then you disappear, your life lost in the firmament. Lightning, you are flashing, and you are off and on, and you are gone. You're like lightning, flashing off and on. Brother, you are gone. That's a real pick-me-up, huh? You get halfway through a song like that and you realize, boy, this is a real bummer. I didn't realize I'd forgotten. Christy had taken me away with stories of protest in California. So I'm just gonna play you one more, and we're gonna get on with the night. It's a 50-minute murder ballad that So I was talking to Lisa about when the troubles came, when the COVID hit. I was on the road. I was in New Orleans about the first week of March, and I had spent 2 weeks in the French Quarter, and life was great. Everything was perfect. But like for most of us, it happened, and it happened fast. All the work was gone, and I came home. But I had a lucky thing happen. I've been keeping a little tiny bunkhouse behind the National Hotel on Block Island for 24 years, I guess, since 1997. Yes, thank you. Have you? It's a very small place. But thank you for applauding. But so when the weather got warm, I made a run for it. I just went out there and I just stayed. And this was really, I've been back a day or two, but this is my first day back here, and it doesn't feel much different, really. It's wonderful. But gave me time to think, and I've been running a tab at that hotel since 1997, so I can't, I'm afraid to go back. They might call that in. But I thought this was an appropriate song. I made this up. I met a retiring yacht salesman at the bar one stormy afternoon, and we got into it. And I don't know about writing stories or poems. I know sometimes making up songs is fairly easy because I just sort of listened to what he said and I wrote it down. It's called Passing Through. Afternoon of the storm, stood on Sunset Hill, looking through the pouring rain as the great salt pond was filled. Beyond the point, the sea was wild, the gulls were diving down to the churning spray of the Block Island Sound. Michael was from an island family, lived there most his life. And I met him in the hotel lobby, we talked into the night. Just before the temperatures changes, Michael turned to me, said to me, it's coming back now. He said that the more that you live, the more that you learn that the winds are gonna blow and the tide here will turn, and you are temporary. Me and you, we are only passing through. You see, Michael had a wife and 2 children, ran the charters on the bay. After 70 years of making plans, he was living for today. He said, with the storm come the changes, rock is only shifting sand. When I was a boy, the shallow harbor was dry land. And the more that you live, the more that you learn that these winds are gonna blow and the tide is gonna turn, but you are temporary. We are only passing through. So you got the ceaseless waves upon the shore, the winds are gonna blow, and time will erase your footprints when you go. And the world will keep turning on and on and on, and the world will keep turning on the sun. When you're gone, when you're gone, Michael said memories are photographs, in black and in white, and the shape of the world is what you know until another storm ignites. And boats here will keep arriving, people gonna come and go. From my point of view, standing here tonight, it's all you need to know. more that you live, the more that you learn that these winds are gonna blow, and you are temporary. You are only passing through. And that the changes that come when these winds do blow, that is your maker's way to let you know that you are temporary. You are only temporary. We are only temporary. We are only passing through. I'm absolutely honored to play for you. Thank you, guys. I've enjoyed this immensely. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. Corey Morse was right about you. Whew. Beautiful. Beautiful, Mark. Thank you. We needed that energy and that warmth. Wow. Okay. Just one. You're all going to get in your cars and you're going to turn your phones on and you're going to learn shortly that speaking of passing through, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just. She's, so I'm sorry. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that. Julia just let me know. So, listen. Yeah. Hold it, okay? Hold it in your hearts and stay put. Because it's good to be with people when you learn something like that. It's good to reach out a hand, and it's good to be surrounded by song. Mark, you had no idea that happened when you just decided to sing that song. And Julia ran up to show me the news. So this is how the world goes on with us puny human beings in it trying to navigate, okay? I'm sorry. And we're all, I don't have anything to say about it, but I could not acknowledge that and go on. The only person who could probably carry us through this is Carol Ann Davis. Carol Ann carries so much in her heart and in her mind. Margaret, I know you're here somewhere, but you two are very kindred to me in terms of the knowledge that you carry, the scholarship that you carry, and the great compassion with which you transform that into your work. And so I'm sorry I had to tell you that, but I had to tell you that. Carol Ann Davis, her lengthy biography is on her website. Her abbreviated biography is in the program. There are two amazing books of poems, Psalm and Atlas Hour, that preceded the book of essays that came out in March, I believe, which is when Carol Ann, or April, Carol Ann was going to be reading for us. That's really not necessary, but it's also part of the dance, isn't it? So here's to the Carol Ann, come on. At any rate, I met Carol Ann Davis in Charleston, South Carolina about 10 years ago when I was palling around. I was the Poet Laureate of Rhode Island, and Marjorie Wentworth, who read for us last fall in September, was and still is the State Poet Laureate of South Carolina. And I got to meet Carol Ann down there. And we read at a bunch of times and did a bunch of traveling road shows and had a bunch of terrific times together. And then Carol Ann got a position at Fairfield University and shifted from Charleston, South Carolina to Newtown, Connecticut, just a few months before the tragedy in Sandy Hook. And that, I don't think that was an accident, because there are some things that are so huge, many things that are so huge, Most of us can't find the language for them, but it's necessary for people who have those skills to be in those situations to begin to transform some of it. So it's no accident, Carol Ann, that you made that huge change of life with your husband and your 2 young sons, and the rest of the world will reap the benefits of that change in location and the work that you've done out of that. So please come on up wherever you are, my dear friend, and guide us through this tender, beautiful, fragile evening.
I'm so grateful to be here among you all, even today, even this minute. I want to thank Christy and Mark and Lisa for having me, and all of you for being here. Little, big things come in little packages. And we know that Ruth has a big legacy, and I think this is kind of evidence, the kind of gathering that we're at right now is evidence of an ongoing practice of humanity that's been going on. Poetry was first reciting of history around campfires, and so sometimes poets are very private people. They're very meditative. I was one of those very meditative poets until I was thrust into this situation that Lisa described, where history sort of chose me to be witness to an incredible community experience, the rending of the fabric of a community and its stitching back together. And so I think that I can navigate this dissonance of this moment knowing that love prevails, because that's been the lesson of the last almost 8 years. So I'm just going to begin with what I had, and I have a poem that I know I was planning to read that I'll dedicate to Justice Ginsburg. So I just am blown away by the beauty of the evening in terms of what has come before me, and a little humbled by it, and was sitting back there wondering about bringing such gravity to the evening as to begin by reading about Sandy Hook. And I was thinking, well, it all has to do with it, as John Coltrane said in A Love Supreme, and the liner notes to that masterpiece. And then another layer of the tragic and the beautiful layered itself with news of Justice Ginsburg. So maybe, as I often do, I will just revert to the wisdom of my older son, Willem, who titled this book, and you'll understand what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to read you the preface, which explains the title of the book, which is The Nail in the Tree. So the book begins, this is a book of essays recounting my experience of raising my sons in Sandy Hook directly after the shooting and in the aftermath and on the day of. And I have this quote from Walt Whitman. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I write this introductory note, having just come from standing watch outside the locked schoolhouse gate, as my oldest son, Willem, now in 9th grade, participates in the National School Walkout at Newtown High School, a protest organized by the children at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in recognition of the 17 educators and classmates killed in the latest school shooting to rack American campuses. Willem was a 4th grader in Newtown, Connecticut, attending a neighboring elementary school when 21st graders and 6 educators were killed at Sandy Hook School. After the shooting in Parkland, Florida, listening to the names read over the radio, he remarked to me that since he was in elementary school for Sandy Hook and in ninth grade for Parkland, he really had grown up with these shootings. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I sit writing this at a table at my favorite coffee shop in Sandy Hook, not 300 yards from the site of what remains the most lethal shooting at an elementary school in the nation's history. This past weekend, in protest of gun violence, 7,000 pairs of shoes were laid on the White House lawn to signify the 7,000 children lost to gun violence since that day in Sandy Hook. I am proud of Willem, who he was before the shooting, who he has become since. I have watched him grow inside this legacy of gun violence. And this morning, first in a video he texted me, then over the police radio broadcasting from the car guarding the school's entrance as the children rallied outside their building, I heard him and his contemporaries chanting, "We want change, we want change, we want change." These days I see him transforming himself from a boy asking, "What is the grass?" into an engaged citizen who will discover and then demand what he needs from a broken world. By the time this collection is published, I'm quite sure more shoes will have been placed on the White House lawn. My son and I and his father and younger brother will have marched on Washington, joining thousands in calling for change. Those will be important actions, but so too are the quiet acts of contemplation and utterance each of us perform in reverence to the reality of living here each day. Willem moves to action now after years of quiet contemplation of the events of his childhood. I complete this book as one impactful period of his life ends and another, his adulthood, begins. But children are wise, perhaps wiser than their adult selves will be. Once during these trying and difficult years after the shooting in our town, Willem explained that the way he felt about the tragedy was similar to a tree with a nail driven into its skin. As the tree grows, the nail becomes part of it, a gnarled knot in a trunk that nonetheless grows tall and strong. "You would not take out the nail, would you, Mom?" he asked me. "At some point, you have to love the nail." Willem's effort at analogy is the integration of the terrible thing into what he still believes can be a beautiful life. In the Whitman poem that serves as the epigraph for this book, the poet goes on to write, "Oh, I perceive after all so many uttering tongues, and I perceive that they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. Not for nothing do we write, paint, love, live, raise our voices in song as well as in protest. These essays are my exercise in practicing what my children have taught me, loving and continuing to love, the tree and the nail, the ruin of the current moment and its beauty." So that's the epigraph, or that's the preface of the collection. There's lots of other things to read here, but I'm just going to read a very small portion in deference to how many writers in the room about the other thing that sustains one, I hope, right now, which is the repetitive practice of creating art and of writing. Also, those of you who are parents in the audience will know that part of raising kids is being thrown back continually, really, on your own experiences, your foundational childhood experiences. I think both Christy and Mark alluded to these moments for themselves. And so this is just the beginning 2 sections. This book moves paragraph by paragraph. What I just read you is probably the most complete thing that doesn't just have one paragraph to it. But this book moves paragraph by paragraph, so it's about 4 paragraphs from an essay called "The Practice of School Buses and Hummingbirds." The first section I'll read is called "Practice." and it's about an early childhood experience of mine. I am being led. At many moments in the year that comes after the tragedy, it has been helpful to repeat these 4 words, mantra style, so as to call a path into being. This being led has something of the surrender of sleep combined with awareness of self, a self-wakefulness. The result is the blindness of the easily led. I have to relearn each time this part. Don't ask where to, or you aren't worthy anymore of the grand gesture the practice offers you. Such time as I spend sleeping is time tilted toward surrender. In dreams, as nowhere else, am I being led. Sometimes through a window out into the many-mouthed universe, or into memory, where a stranger takes my hand and leads me back to the bleachers at the Little League game from her car, where I've mistakenly gone to wait for my family. I have told my mother I am going back to the car, and she has pointed vaguely in the car's direction, and I have gotten into a car which looks vaguely like ours. And after an interval in which Vishnu's mouth of the universe swallows me, I have been discovered in another car, not mine, and spit out again to join my family. That's one section. Second section, another I. And that another I think, is related to Rumi, which is sweet, but I don't know if we'll get to Rumi in this part or not. Another I. But for a moment, another set of eyes on the scene. Imagine walking up to your car and seeing a small girl inside. Such grave responsibility, such a slipping of the known. Surely she is disoriented. She will need the truth plainly spoken, some kind of explanation so that she will come, but this is not exactly the case with this particular girl. The girl I was will go with anyone because everyone in my family uses the same word. I am gullible. My father puts it more kindly. I can hear him from a distance of 40 years. You are easily led. It starts filial, the kind of family story that brands, limits, and delimits one. But over time it becomes a practice, something I am happy to claim. Is it too far-fetched to surmise that I become a poet because of my family's mild rebuke? Easily led, yes, well, whatever else writing becomes, it begins with a willingness to be led. By now, I have learned just how much of my writing life I have spent learning to trust being led, how difficult it is sometimes to obey the physics of the unknown. Imperfect though my practice has been, when the practice leads me back to that moment in the car, I know I've come for some reason. A mini teleology must exist inside that moment, though I cannot say what exactly it leads to or even towards, except that the subject of how children read their immediate surroundings is newly important to me. In this story, the one in which I am discovered, having wandered into a stranger's empty car at my brother's Little League game, nothing sinister happens, beyond perhaps my learning an important lesson backwards. Lose, and you shall seek. Oh, that's nice. I'm glad you guys are enjoying part of this because it's all so sad. Okay. No, but nothing happened to her in that little moment. So the way I haven't been giving any readings really from this book since it came out. I gave a few like when I was writing it. But what I'd like to do is sort of go forward and backwards in time, which seems especially appropriate during COVID when time has become like, something very strange. And so what I'm going to do now is read from my first book, When Willem, who you met in the preface, Psalm takes place in the year before Willem was born. My father died, and then I became pregnant within the following year. So it was sort of the dissonance of those two experiences, one calling me back to my father and one calling me toward Willem. And so sort of going back to that and then bringing Willem through and bringing me through to the present moment. So this poem is called Naming You. and it's for my son Willem, explaining how his name came to be, but not really. The way poems don't really explain much. Naming you. Before you were named, you came in a white boat. It was the first of many crossings in which grief held a sprig of olive. It was a day with blind heat and no small number of finches. I mean to record that in Siena the lily had grown imperceptible on the church wall, rubbed to nothing by believers in mortar, in paint. I considered indigo, its long history, then ate some Chinese, which made me sick. Like licking a stamp into the netherworld or pasting illustrations to a letter by way of worship. Before you were named, I had a name for a little while, not long. It was Despirito and went back after a week to its native land. Before that, Queens was Queens, and the automats were filled with girls from Macy's. But most of that world is gone now. My little map of sky, my archivist of bone. Now the 100 names for God build a pile of sticks at your feet, if you have feet. If you have eyes, you know about the paucity of still rooms. If you like, you can run into the yard when you hear the train coming. Thank you. This poem is called Catalogos, and I meant to look up logos. At some point I knew it. Is it like all things or things? Logos is a Greek word. Anyway, I meant to look it up and say something witty, but basically it's like a list of things the world is. Catalogos. Inside the mustard seed's halo, a dream of birds. On the tongue of the samurai, a sugary oath. On the lens of the architecton, a history of the Russian Revolution. In the ear of the rosebud, continuous time. Above the fur of the newt, hapless flea eyes. On the tip of recorded geology, a Rome apple. Inside the eye of the loon, high tea. In the far corner of the second floor broom closet, jumper cables, an earring. In the wheel well of a container ship, a dog named Drew. On the cobalt mind of the window dressing, love's appetite, Genesis. Atop the jawed terrain of the Azores, rumor-prone titanium. On the tongue of the pallid bat, blue oregano, the dream of a visit to Dresden. Within the gone byways of thought patterns, a vial of opium. In the marsh mud, favored habitat of the standard nightjar, a groomed stable with a horse called Lucky Lady. In the book predicting the birth of the prophet boy, the short spelling of slow-eyed. In the long canal of a swimmer's ear, the carp's lovely evolution. It's given up for dead, atlas of the world. All right, thank you. That made me feel like I had traveled a little bit. I mean, you're so overstimulated or understimulated by COVID that felt like traveling. It actually did. Okay. Well, I was going to read a poem called The Death of the Age of Reason, so that seems like the one I should dedicate to Ruth. I don't know if I can do it, though. It's about my father's death, but I'm more upset about Ruth right now. Okay. The Death of the Age of Reason. Because I am equal parts salt and dust, solutions are hard to come by. All things have their fulfillment because the horizon is straight, then round. Because we look back, we are given what was probable and not the thing that was. Because I did not keep it well, it prefigures itself. Because I did not think of grave sites, they grew wings. He ate and slept and counted our years on his hands because he was a man. Sat in chairs, hated fish, folded our clothes because. People really are upset, are not like, are, okay, because. It happened just this way, didn't it? A square window, ordinary sky, nurses passing in the halls, the still of tide shift and 2 o'clock. His son recounting the events of his life aloud. Because I worried over you, you were taken from me. Thank you. All right. Rapidly changing plans. Lisa, rapidly changing the order of the reading here. Okay, this one should be bright. It's called Easter Morning with Magic Markers. That pretty much tells you. A confession. My beloved Willem grew a few years, and then even on Easter, I got away to go to my office to write poems, but only, but only after the bunny and all the stuff. But I think that's kind of like, if you were going to trace what a bad mother I was, you'd be able to say, like, she went to her office to write poems on Easter. Yeah, so, and I'm Southern Baptist, so that's like, yeah, okay. And I'm just trying to bring the mood up here. I'm here all week, okay. All right, so this is from the next book, when they're a little older, but not as old as protesting gun violence at their schools. Okay, Easter Morning with Magic Markers. This marker in your hand is solvent, and on special paper reveals, you tell me, a butterfly's wing. Its underpinnings colorful, though the surface is black. Oh, my colors, you said the moment you saw it in the basket, the colors I wanted. That kind of gratitude, the faith of it too. The Easter bunny came but has no face, right? And how you looked for the eggs behind books in your jar of pirates on the sill, and finding them was disappointed when I told you opening each yields only white and yolk, and not another surprise, as with the plastic ones at school. These the disappointments we learn little from, the cold snaps and waking to a cold house. So the bugs we find are dead in the pantry. And then when I leave you, having fled your brother's month-old cry, I see the girls on the church lawn covering a cross with wildflowers between bites of cupcake, each stem finding its place in foam. I don't know what desire sleeps in us to make lovely their shivering, your natural peers in their new dresses, your faith-loving counterparts, bells that accompany your butterfly wing in the dark. Thank you. So, one of the things that I think is just wrenching about being in the world is the simultaneity of things. You know, the way in which beauty is present with violence. Even tonight, it's also simultaneous. And one of the things I've aimed to do throughout my work is take a kind of a long view, you know, to look at pieces of art and derive from them some resiliency. And one of the places we ended up traveling to as a young family was Prague. I was teaching there a little bit, and we saw the exhibit of children's drawings from Terezin concentration camp. And I think that parenting is a strange accident. You're always like, it's an accident of history when you do it. So I found this so incredible that these parents had taught their children art in these camps, and that this art survives. So this is a two-part poem, and it's a mirror poem. So it's the same set of words, just forwards and backwards. And later, when I lived in Sandy Hook, I was able to look back at this poem and kind of draw a thread that I had been thinking about these difficult subjects about children in danger a long time, and this poem kind of helped me. So that's why I'm reading it tonight. Upon seeing the Terretzen children's drawings, 2 parts. 1. It was something I wanted, hem of a skirt, prehensile and its antecedents. The story of the Annunciation told backwards and with feeling. The wind a little pent up inside us, an undersea world stitched on register paper and drawn by a child, most of them gone now, the house of the minute and 1,000 sirens calling them toward what little protection a devil offers. The basement full of yard goods, the 3rd floor storm drain. The day on the street we walked a little ahead of the rain that was coming. Remember, your mother still lost somewhere, our boys barely thought of, but safer for it. That's when I saw the detail, thought to tell you its secret. Christ in limbo, a museum full of names, our own children in an apartment full of bees. But here, the names of the dead, so many children, their pictures on postcards, perfect jellyfish, bunny ears, starfish, electric eels. It was like listening to the music of their childhood or walking out into the deepest possible water. Strange fish, if I could, I would follow you, stitch your name into history somewhere. 2. If I could stitch your name into history somewhere, strange fish, I would follow you into possible water, or walk out into the deepest music of childhood. Perfect jellyfish, bunny ears, starfish, electric eels. So like pictures on postcards. But here the names of the dead are so many children, their dreams asleep in an apartment full of bees. A museum so full of names our own children think to tell you, Christ in limbo, made safer for seeing detail. Our boys barely thought of, your mother still lost somewhere in the rain that was coming. Remember the day on the street. We walked a little ahead, noticed the 3rd floor storm drain, the basement full of yard goods, saw what little protection a devil offers, 1,000 sirens calling children, most of them gone now, the house of the minute stitched on register paper, drawn by a child, and pent up inside us, an undersea world, a feeling, the wind, a little story, the Annunciation, told backwards. Hem of a skirt, prehensile and its antecedents. All of it, something I wanted. So last poem from Atlas Hour, and then just a few new poems from the moment that we're in, which I hope are mostly prayers. So this title is What Takes My Breath, and it's also the first line. What takes my breath is just the weight of footstep on stair, or the moment one takes before calling a name, as if somehow, hymnody, calumny, grace, the world can empty into our slightest touch, empty itself slowly and give over its translucence, something of being born in it or to it, so that where it is dark, we let it be dark, light, light. Thank you. Okay, so a few poems to cope with the moment. Having learned a few lessons from my my beautiful boys. This poem I'm going to read next is a poem about visiting La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, which is the unfinished cathedral that Gaudi, that they're still building, which is another beautiful thing. I mean, we have to continually go back to the idea of the practice of this. So they're still building this cathedral, and Gaudi's been dead 100 years. And also it's a wish for public places, to be together in public places, and I love that, like, I'm together with you in a public place because it's been such a tough and lonely time. So thank you for that. This is called You Could Into This Shiny Place, La Sagrada Familia. You could into this shiny place insert yourself, and what harm would it do, a little skin peeling off where you were first kissed, a room undone by its own spacious opening? Do something that responds to your psychic state. Yes, that's just the light hitting the window the way the crazy architect wanted. He's long dead, but above us they're pouring concrete into his molds. See what it looks like to run your hand along the floor. Can skin possibly keep up with that wholly? What harm would it do to try? Touch the place of first kiss and keep it coming. The way the sun moves through Sagrada must resemble its path through the solidity of the body, as if to keep our worries in cobalt or amber, depending on time of day. What, after all, is trying or ruin against a nothing you can't name? The time we are here, let's don't. Let's get dizzy just by raising our heads to the shine inside, answering someone's approximation of the holy. Its heavy doors meant to call on our own darknesses, the ones chased out by such color, and by such color seen and known. Thank you. So 2 last poems, both of them prayers. I found I wrote a bunch of poems. I've written like 50 poems since COVID. So that's how I know it's just a way of coping. But they're either prayers or questions always. So these 2 poems, I brought some prayers. This one is called Let It Come. And I'll just read these 2 and thank you now for having me, and then read them. Let it come. Sort of trying to accept what's happening right now, just made harder by the news tonight. Let it come as the world comes, a crawling thing in blown daylight. The first birds of morning, how the world comes calling, how it catcalls and mocks and draws by melody its traps and trappings. Surrender to it. Yours the first footfall, your fingerprint breaking frost cover, last frost of spring, fresh, not salt water on a foreign tongue that turns out to be yours. All of a sudden, let it come. The eddying emptiness of last year's sugar water where hummingbirds expect it. As it comes, let want come. Let hunger in and the urgency of forgotten things. Welcome as weary travelers, them come miles to give you news. As the dark wing comes, let it, cascading as it does down hillside its long shadows, and with ragged breath as if by melody to trap all trappings, the way the river's eating its way along the roadside, the road a trail almost, and you its homesteader. Go on. Ask what saves you, and you have your answer. You in the seed bed or among the heavy reeds. This is the part where you part your lips and look upward, the half-gone wasp nest swaying thinly in thin breeze. It and you of someone's making. This is where you unspin from all that was into new becoming. As it will, let the world come. As the world comes, let it. Thank you. This is called Bring, and thank you again for having me. Bring brightness, bring light. Martyr thy matches to thy flame. To wonder enslave yourself and in common grief submerge. Such brightness as has its seam, our own velvet darkness. Let the massacre in. It's boiling there in the everyday, as is the wingspan of the hummingbird, and how the water fell from a great height just now to make that sound. Leastwise, when adding pluses and minuses, count how, though our faces are obscured, in the 6th month of virus we learn to read smile under fabric, while among us still there's the knife edge of gunshot and the wall with the bullet marks. Likewise, birth, the pale cry followed by a long gulp of first oxygen, and the delicate blue vein under my son's eye that took 10 years to grow deeper in till I can no longer find it. Into the world in which he still lives, walk your worst flames, which already roil inside him, he a creature of all coming history, as much as combination of carbons and waters that floated fractal heavy in icy star space. Martyr match, meet martyr flame, run me toward danger with arms wide open. Bring toward me such cold inheritance as shines with its own disappointment. Bring all, bring dearth, surfeit, loss. Bring close to me all of which I am born. Thank you. Thank you, and thanks everyone for coming. And Lisa, thank you so much.
I've got to thank my amazing board, who is pretty much also my tribe of volunteers. We add Kate Moffett to that team, Jim Marshall, Christopher Greenleaf for the sound, and Jason and Sophie, who have stepped in to help us with our sound system as we go through our paces. So gratitude all around, grief all around, and love all around. Thank you for being here. Good night.